am Daisy Alduhan, and my topic for my report is all about credit risk and understanding credit risk. So first, we're going to define what is a credit risk. So a credit risk is the possibility of a loss resulting from a borrower's failure to repay a loan or meet contractual obligations, meaning if the borrower will not repay the loan or meets its obligation in the contract, it will cause a credit risk. So traditionally, it refers to the risk that a lender may not receive the owed principal and interest, which result in an interruption of cash flows and increased cost for collection. So, excess cash flows may be written to provide additional cover for a credit risk. When a lender faces heightened credit risk, it can be mitigated via a higher coupon rate, which provides for a greater cash flows. Although it's impossible to know exactly who will default on obligations, properly assessing and managing credit risk can lessen the severity of a loss. Interest payments from the borrower or issuer of a debt obligations are lenders or investors' reward for assuming the credit risk. So after all my discussions about the credit risk, we can understand that a credit risk is the possibility of losing a lender takes on due to the possibility of a borrower's not paying back the loan. Meaning, credit risk can be the possibility of disappearance of the loaner or losing a lender because are due to the borrowers are not paying back the loans. Second, consumer credit risk can be measured by the 5 C's, such as credit history, capacity to repay, capital the loan's conditions, and associated collateral. And if consumers posing a higher credit risk usually end up paying higher interest rates on loans. At this point, I am going to discuss for us to understand more about credit risk. Since earlier, I have already discussed the definitions of credit risk and its possibilities to the lenders and consumers. And we already have takeaways about the discussions that I have earlier. So, for us to understand more about credit risk, I will discuss some situations that may cause credit risk to a company. So, for example, when the lenders offer mortgages, credit cards, or other types of loans, there is a risk that the borrower may not repay the loan. Similarly, if a company offers credit to a customer, there is a risk that the customer will not pay their invoices. Credit risk is also describes the risk that a bond issuer may fail to make payment when requested or that an insurance company will be unable to pay a claim. So, credit risks are calculated based on the borrower's overall ability to repay a loan according to its original terms. To assess credit risk on a consumer loan, lenders look at the 5 C's. These are the credit history, capacity to repay, capital, the loan's conditions, and associated collateral. Some companies have established departments solely responsible for assessing the credit risk of their current and potential customers. Technology has afforded businesses the ability to quickly analyze data used to assess a customer's risk. So, some companies are use technology uh, to check if their borrowers has the ability to repay their loans. That's why the 5 C's are always. So, the credit being extended is usually in the form of either a loan or an account receivable. In case of an unpaid loan, interest on the debt and, un- and unpaid principal were areas. In the case of an unpaid account receivable, there is no loss of interest. In both cases, the party granting credit may also incur incremental collection cost. Further, the party to whom cash is owed may suffer some degree of disruption in its cash flows, which may require expensive debt or equity to cover. Credit risk is a lesser issue where the selling party gross profit on sale is quite high, since it is really only running the risk of loss on the relatively small proportion of an account receivable that is compromised of its own cost. Conversely, it's, if gross profit margins are small, credit risk becomes a substantial issue, forcing sellers to engage in detailed credit analysis before allowing sales on credit. So the overall summary of my report is that a credit risk is the risk of loss due to the borrower's not repaying a loan. More specifically, it refers to a lender's risk of having its cash flows interrupted when a borrower does not pay principal or interest to it. Credit risk is considered to be higher when the borrower does not have sufficient cash flow to pay the creditor, or it does not have sufficient assets to make a payment. If the risk of non-payment is higher, the lender is more likely to demand compensation in the form of higher interest rates.